When I came to, I was standing in front of a preschool, having a full-blown existential crisis. I had somehow been dropped into the life of a despised son-in-law to a mega-rich family. My phone buzzed. It was my Ice Queen CEO wife, a woman I exchanged maybe 3 sentences with a year. Her voice was like shattered glass. "Ethan Clark, you will pick up the child and bring him home. If you're late again, you can pack your bags and get out of the Rossi family for good." I didn't even know what her son looked like. Just as panic set in, a small human cannonball slammed into my leg, wrapped his arms around me, and yelled in a tiny, high-pitched voice, "Daddy, I miss you so much." Well, speak of the devil. Without a second thought, I scooped up my new son and carried him home. The moment we walked through the door, the permafrost on my wife's face finally cracked. Her lips trembled as she pointed a shaky finger at the kid next to me, her voice strangled. "Ethan, have you lost your mind? That's the son of my nemesis, Julian Vance." My brain short-circuited. A wave of memories from the original owner of this body flooded in. Julian Vance? The ruthless shark who was actively trying to destroy my wife, Isabella Rossi, in the corporate world? I didn't just pick up the wrong kid. I'd brought home a ticking time bomb. Isabella's chest heaved, her fury barely contained. She pointed toward the door, each word ground out between clenched teeth. "Get him out of my house now." Before I could say a word, my little son peeked out from behind my legs. He blinked his huge, grape-like eyes, tilted his head at Isabella, and said sweetly, "Pretty lady, are you my mommy? You're even prettier than the picture my daddy hides under his pillow." Isabella's rage got stuck in her throat. Her face went from ghost white to crimson, then to a shade of thunderous gray. It was quite the show. I fought back a smile and cleared my throat. "Well, honey, you heard him. The kid's already calling you mom. Send him back now? That would be just cruel." Isabella looked like she was about to have an aneurysm. She shot me a glare so potent it could have curdled milk. It was a complex look, a cocktail of contempt, fury, and the familiar disgust that screamed, "You useless freeloader, always making my life harder." That familiar feeling of being worthless washed over me, and it was the last straw. It cleared away any lingering confusion from being zapped into this new life. Screw this. I was done being a doormat. I knelt, ruffled the kid's hair, and spoke loudly on purpose. "Don't worry, buddy. Your mommy's just a little shy. Deep down, she thinks you're awesome." The little guy was a natural. He immediately threw his arms around my neck and planted a loud, wet kiss on my cheek. I knew my mommy liked me. Watching our little two-man show, Isabella's temple began to throb. She took a deep, steadying breath, trying to regain her composure, and pulled out her phone. "I'm calling Julian Vance right now. He can come get his own son." I slapped my hand over her phone. "Are you crazy?" Isabella recoiled, her eyes wide with disbelief. I had never, ever spoken to her in that tone. "Think about it. You call him, he shows up here, and he sees his son in our house," I said, my voice low and urgent. "What's the narrative going to be? What will people say? Will the story be that the great Isabella Rossi took pity on her rival's child? Or will it be that the CEO of Rossi Enterprises secretly held a competitor's son hostage?" With every word, her expression grew darker. I leaned in closer. "Vance Industries puts out one press release saying you kidnapped his kid, and your company's stock will nosedive into oblivion by morning. You know I'm right." Isabella's body went rigid. She stared at me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in those cold, distant eyes. Sensing the tension, the little guy tightened his grip on my leg and whimpered, "Daddy, I don't want to go. I like this daddy, and I like this pretty mommy." His voice was thick with fake tears, a truly pathetic sound. That soft, pleading voice seemed to pierce through Isabella's armor. The hard line of her mouth softened, just a fraction. Just then, the doorbell rang. Arthur, the butler, scrambled into the room, his face pale. "Ma'am, sir, there's a problem. Mr. Julian Vance is here." The atmosphere in the living room crackled with tension. Isabella's face drained of all color. My mind raced. Damn it. Speak of the devil, indeed. He couldn't have picked a worse time. Before anyone could react, the front door was thrown open with tremendous force. A man in a bespoke suit, his hair slicked back with a severity that matched his expression, stormed and flanked by 2 bodyguards in black. His predatory gaze swept the room before locking onto me. "Ethan Clark," he snarled. "You gold-digging parasite, you've grown a spine? You dare to touch my son?" He jabbed a finger so close to my face I could feel the air move. The original Ethan would have cowered, but I wasn't him. I slapped his hand away. "Hey, Julian, we're all adults here. Use your words, not your hands. This is a private residence, not a locker room. You don't want me to file a complaint, do you?" Julian Vance froze. It wasn't just him. Isabella and Arthur stared at me as if I'd grown a second head. In their world, the name Ethan Clark was synonymous with spineless yes-man. Julian's face darkened, my defiance clearly infuriating him. "You think you're in a position to make threats?" He ignored me and turned to the boy hiding behind me. "Leo, come on. We're going home." The kid shrank back, clinging to my leg for dear life. "No, you're a bad man. I don't know you," he shrieked. "This is my daddy." Julian's hand hung in the air, his expression a kaleidoscope of shock and fury. He clearly never imagined his own son would publicly claim a freeloader as his father. "Now," Julian's voice was a low growl of suppressed rage. "You stop this nonsense right now, or I swear I'll—" "Wah wah." His threat was cut short by a wail so loud it could have shattered glass. The kid's performance was breathtaking. He sobbed, burrowing into my arms. "Daddy, save me. The kidnapper is trying to take me. Mommy, call the police. He's going to sell me." The word mommy landed like a 1-2 punch on Isabella and Julian. Isabella looked stunned, a hint of panic in her eyes. Julian's face was a mask of pure, twisted rage. He pointed at me, his whole body trembling. "Clark, what kind of poison have you been feeding my son?" I held the sobbing child, my face a picture of innocence. "Julian, let's not make baseless accusations. Your son ran up to me, called me daddy, and hugged my leg in front of his entire preschool class. The teachers saw it all. Now he's saying you're a kidnapper. Who am I supposed to believe?" I patted the boy's back soothingly. "Sure, it's okay, buddy. Daddy's here. No one's going to take you away." Julian lunged forward, but the moment he got close, Leo screamed even louder. "Bad man, go away. I don't want you." He opened his mouth and chomped down, hard, on the back of Julian's outstretched hand. "Hiss!" Julian snatched his hand back, a perfect, bloody set of tiny teeth marks imprinted on his skin. The scene was excruciatingly awkward. A man's biological son had just bitten him to protect his fake dad. This was better than a daytime soap opera. Isabella stood to the side, watching as the man she'd always seen as a complete waste of space went head-to-head with her arch-nemesis and actually came out on top. Her gaze was filled with a new kind of curiosity. Julian stared at the bite mark on his hand, then at his son, who was glaring at him from the safety of my arms. His handsome face was as black as thunder. He knew he wasn't getting his son back today. Not like this. Making a scene would only make things worse. "Fine. Just fine." Julian bit out, his eyes venomous. "Ethan Clark, you just wait." He had to back down. Leo's acting was too convincing. The kid was now rolling on the floor, screaming that Julian was a kidnapper trying to sell him on the black market. Julian was probably terrified of tomorrow's headlines. Billionaire CEO attempts to abduct child. Son claims no relation. The humiliation would be epic. "I'll be back for him tomorrow," Julian snarled, pointing at Leo. "If a single hair on his head is out of place, I'll make sure you, and all of Rossi Enterprises, pay the price." With that, he and his equally bewildered bodyguards stormed out, slamming the door behind them. Silence descended on the living room. It was just me, Isabella, and the little drama king on the floor. 3 people, 2 layers of awkwardness, and 1 very heavy silence. I looked at Leo, who was still making little whimpering noises. This kid was a handful. Isabella, her composure slowly returning, walked over and looked down at me. "Are you proud of yourself?" I shrugged. "A little." Seeing Julian Vance squirm was pretty satisfying, I have to admit. My shamelessness seemed to stun her into silence for a moment. "Have Arthur prepare dinner," she said coolly. "Take care of him, and don't let him cause any more trouble." With that, she turned and walked up the stairs, the click of her heels echoing in the hall. Was that acceptance? I glanced down at Leo. He immediately stopped his fake crying, scrambled to his feet. and gave me a conspiratorial wink. Unbelievable. The Academy owes this kid an Oscar. Dinner was bizarre. The three of us sat at a dining table long enough to land a small plane, with what felt like a mile of mahogany between each of us. Arthur had prepared a feast, but Leo was a picky eater. A plate of bright green broccoli was placed in front of him. He scrunched up his nose and shook his head violently. "I'm not eating that. They look like green worms." Isabella set down her fork, her icy gaze fixed on him. "Eat it." Her tone was a command, not a suggestion. Leo's lower lip began to tremble. A flood was imminent. I quickly intervened, spearing a piece of broccoli with my fork. "These aren't worms. These are super soldier serum pods, just like Captain America's." I held it up. "See? This one gives you super strength." I gestured to the carrots. "And those are Iron Man's arc reactor fuel cells. They let you fly." I made a whooshing sound and mimicked flying. Leo's eyes lit up. He opened his mouth, still skeptical, and I popped the broccoli in. He chewed. I provided the sound effects. BZZZT. Power levels rising. Enemy forces neutralized. Leo giggled, then pointed at the carrots on his plate. "Daddy, what Avenger is this?" "That's the Hulk. They make you super strong." In a matter of minutes, the plate of vegetables he wouldn't touch was completely gone, devoured as various forms of superhero fuel. Across the table, Isabella watched the entire exchange, dumbfounded. She couldn't seem to process how the useless freeloader she married could so easily handle a difficult child. After dinner, an even bigger challenge emerged. Bath time. Leo stood at the bathroom door, clutching a towel, and announced with unwavering confidence, "Daddy, Mommy, we have to take a bath together. The storybooks all say families take baths together." Isabella's face went from pale to pitch black. I quickly dragged him into the bathroom and shut the door, cutting off Isabella's murderous glare. Soon Leo's off-key, singing filled the air. Splish splash, I was talking a bath. After the bath came the final ultimate test. Bedtime. Isabella and I had been married for a year. We had slept in separate rooms for a year. Tonight, thanks to Leo, we were forced to share the same king-size bed. Leo, like a tiny tyrant, claimed the prime real estate right in the middle. His reasoning was sound. "I have to sleep in the middle to protect pretty mommy from daddy's cooties." I lay on one side, feeling Isabella's body next to me, stiff as a board. I had to stifle a laugh. She had probably never been this uncomfortable in her entire life. In the darkness, I could hear her breathing, shallow and rapid, despite her best efforts to control it. She didn't sleep a wink. I, on the other hand, slept like a baby. The next day, Julian Vance's revenge arrived right on schedule. Isabella was woken up by a relentless barrage of phone calls. Sporting 2 dark circles under her eyes, she rushed into her home office, her face a mask of stress. I overheard snippets of words like project, poached, and stock price. It was clear Julian was playing for keeps. My mother-in-law, Sharon, must have heard the commotion because she stormed downstairs in her silk pajamas. The moment she saw me, her face twisted with hate. "Ethan Clark, you are a curse on this family," she shrieked, pointing a finger at my nose. "It was the worst luck in the world for us to let a deadbeat like you marry into this family. And now you've brought that little monster from the Vance family home with you? Are you trying to get us all killed?" Her words were sharp and cruel. The old Ethan would have been on his knees, apologizing. But I just calmly walked past her into the kitchen, grabbed a glass of milk and a sandwich, and headed for the office. I tuned out her screeching completely. Arguing with a shrew was beneath me. I pushed open the office door. Isabella was in the middle of an emergency Zoom call, her brows knitted together, her lips a thin, tight line. The anxiety in her eyes was palpable. I placed a breakfast beside her laptop. "The world can end after you've had something to eat." My voice was quiet, but in the tense, high-stakes meeting, it sounded like a gunshot. Isabella's head snapped up. She looked at me with an incredibly complex expression. On the screen, a bald executive was still ranting. "Isabella, Vance came prepared this time. He outbid us by 5% for the Hudson Yards development project. Our capital flow is stretched to the limit." Another exec chimed in. "He's right, Isabella. Julian Vance is trying to bleed us dry." Isabella massaged her temples, looking utterly exhausted. I'd been listening from aside. I couldn't help but chuckle. What a bunch of idiots. It wasn't loud, but everyone on the Zoom call heard it. The virtual meeting room fell silent. Everyone stared at me like I was a lunatic. The bald executive was the first to explode. Ethan Clark? What would a gold-digging freeloader know about business? Who gave you permission to speak? Get out. Isabella frowned, her voice cold. Ethan, leave. I didn't move. I picked up an apple from the bowl on her desk and took a slow, deliberate bite. I'm just saying, you're all looking at this the wrong way. Julian Vance is overpaying for a project with slim margins. Do you really think he's just trying to steal a piece of property? I looked at the screen full of so-called business elites with a smirk. This is a diversion. His real target isn't the project. It's a classic misdirection. He's using this to drive down your stock price so he can scoop up shares on the cheap from your smaller investors. By the time you realize what's happening, he'll own a big enough stake to challenge your control of the company. Madam CEO? My words landed like a depth charge in the silent office. The entire call was in shock. Even Isabella had forgotten to breathe, staring at me in stunned silence. The bald executive stammered, "Teach, that's nonsense. What proof do you have?" I smiled. I may not understand your fancy financial models, but I understand people. A man as arrogant and proud as Julian Vance doesn't go for small victories. He goes for the kill shot. This real estate deal? It's a distraction. He's making a big show of attacking the tail, so you don't notice him going for the head. I finished the apple and tossed the core perfectly into the trash can. The solution is simple. I continued. Create a bigger fire for him to put out in his own backyard. He's messing with your real estate. You go after his weak spot. I happen to know that Vance Industries is in the final stages of negotiating a patent license with a German tech firm for a new battery technology. It's the cornerstone of his 5-year plan. You send a team to Germany right now, and you acquire that patent, no matter the cost. Let's see how much time he has to play games in Hudson Yards when his own house is burning down. Dead silence. On the screen, the executives sat with their mouths hanging open, frozen. And Isabella was looking at me as if she'd never seen me before. On that face that had been frozen for a year, an expression other than coldness and contempt finally appeared. It was a look of pure, unadulterated shock. I grinned, showing all my teeth. So, honey, how was that for a freeloader's analysis? Isabella was speechless for a solid 30 seconds. Finally, as if making a monumental decision, she turned to the still petrified executives on the screen and issued a series of commands. Immediately halt all further investment in the Hudson Yards project, cut our losses and pull out. Marketing, PR, release positive forecasts immediately. Stabilize the stock price. Mr. Davis, you will lead a team personally. Get on the next flight to Germany. I don't care what it costs. Give me that battery patent. The orders were swift, decisive, and final. She ended the call, leaving the two of us alone in the quiet office. The storm in her eyes had yet to subside. How did you know all that? I shrugged. Lucky guess. Impossible, she shot back. The negotiations between Vance and that German firm were top secret. Even I only found out through a confidential source who. She stopped herself mid-sentence. She was right. If it took her as sworn enemy that much effort to uncover that information, how did I, the useless husband, know about it? I obviously couldn't tell her that before I was zapped into this life. I was a business analyst who studied corporate raiders like Julian Vance for a living. I could predict his playbook in my sleep. So I just gave her a mysterious smile. A magician never reveals his secrets. Seeing her at a loss for words was deeply satisfying. So you thought you were too good for me? How the tables have turned. Isabella's plan was executed with ruthless efficiency. That afternoon, Julian Vance got a call from Germany. The patent deal he had spent 6 months cultivating had been snatched from under his nose by Rossi Enterprises. The rumor was that he smashed a 6-figure antique vase in his office. He stormed over to our house again, this time with a lawyer and a mountain of expensive-looking gifts. He shoved a massive, limited edition Transformers box at Leo. "Leo, come home with Daddy. This is one of only 10 Optimus Prime figures in the world. I bought it for you." Leo didn't even glance at the toy. He just ducked behind me. Julian tried to coax him for a few more minutes, but his patience quickly wore thin. His inner tyrant surfaced. "Leo Vance, I'm going to count to 3. If you don't come with me, I will cancel your allowance and throw away every single one of your toys. It was textbook emotional blackmail. I was about to step in, but Leo beat me to it. He held up his wrist, where he wore a kid's GPS smartwatch, and pressed a button. A recording played loud and clear from the tiny speaker. It was Julian's voice, sharp and angry. What are you crying about? Boys don't cry. You cry again, and you can get out. How can you be so stupid? You can't even do this one simple thing. What are you good for besides causing trouble? You're so annoying. I don't even know why I had you. Susan, get a nanny to watch him. I don't want him bothering me. The recordings were filled with Julian's raw, unfiltered irritation and disdain for his own son. The living room fell silent. Julian's face went from livid to a deep, mottled purple. He never dreamed his private tirades would be recorded and played back in front of his biggest rival. It was a public execution. Leo tossed the watch aside, as if it were contaminated. Then, as if his heart had been shattered into a million pieces, he launched himself into Isabella's arms. He clung to her waist, sobbing his heart out. Pretty mommy, I don't want to go with him. He's so mean. He doesn't like me. He only yells at me. Please let me stay with you. I'll be good, I promise. I'll help you fight all the bad monsters. Leo's small body trembled, mostly for dramatic effect, I was sure. But his tear-streaked, terrified face struck a chord deep inside Isabella. She had always been an iceberg, cold, powerful, and unapproachable. But now, holding this small child who was seeking refuge in her arms, her heart cracked. She looked up, and for the first time, she stood up to Julian Vance, defending me and this strange, temporary family we'd formed. Her voice was still cool, but it carried a new, unshakable resolve. Mr. Vance, it seems your parenting methods are deeply flawed. Until he is emotionally stable, I believe it is in his best interest to remain here. Julian looked from Isabella, who was protectively holding his son, to me, standing there with an I told you so expression on my face. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. In the end, he had no choice but to leave, once again, in utter defeat, his lawyer and expensive gifts in tow. 6. To drive the final nail in Julian's coffin, and to reward our little star player, Leo, I made a bold suggestion. Let's take him to an amusement park. What? Isabella looked at me as if I'd suggested a trip to the moon. Let him experience what a warm, loving family feels like, I said, spinning a plausible tale. It'll be good for his psychological development. Plus, it will show Julian Vance that we're the better choice. Isabella's first instinct was to refuse. But Leo, a master of emotional manipulation, immediately tugged on her sleeve, his eyes welling up with tears. Mommy, do you not like being with me? Am I being bad? Is that why you won't take me out to play? The guilt trip was flawlessly executed. Faced with Leo's trembling lip and tear-filled eyes, the word no died on her lips. And so, the next day, the famously frosty CO, Isabella Rossi, showed up at a loud, chaotic children's amusement park, dressed in a sharply tailored pantsuit and 4-inch heels. She stood out among the other parents in their t-shirts and jeans like a queen who had accidentally wandered into a peasant village. I had a laugh at how utterly out of place she looked. I ran to a gift shop and bought 3 sparkly Mickey Mouse ear headbands. I put one on, gave one to Leo, and then, while Isabella was distracted, I plopped the third one right on her head. Ethan, what are you doing? She was mortified, reaching up to take it off. I held her hand down and snapped a picture with my phone. Don't move. It's cute. We need a souvenir. She glared at me, her face a thundercloud, but she didn't take the ears off. In the bright sun, the glittery Mickey ears against her stern, beautiful face created a bizarrely adorable contrast. We went on the carousel. Leo insisted that Isabella and I ride the same horse with him. His logic? My teacher said daddies and mommies have to protect their babies, so we have to sit together. Isabella was clearly against it, but after some good-natured teasing from the ride operator about keeping the family together, she reluctantly squeezed onto the horse behind me. I sat in front with her behind me. To keep from falling off, she had to reach out and tentatively, hesitantly, grab the fabric of my shirt at my waist. I could feel how rigid her body was and the tiny bit of warmth from her hands through my shirt. I could even smell the clean, faint scent of her shampoo. I shifted my weight on purpose, and her grip instantly tightened. I could feel the heat radiating from her, and I knew her ears had to be bright red. Later, we went to the haunted house. Normally, Isabella wouldn't be caught dead in a place like this. But Leo wrapped himself around her leg and whined, "Mommy, come with me. I'm scared." Of course, once inside, the little liar wasn't scared at all. He hooped and hollered with excitement. It was Isabella who, when a fake ghost dropped from the ceiling, let out a short, sharp scream and reflexively grabbed my arm, her grip like a vice. In the darkness, I could feel her nails digging into my skin. I covered her cold hand with mine and pulled her behind me. "It's okay. They're fake," I said, my voice steady against the cacophony of screams and spooky sounds. "I've got you." She didn't say anything, but the pressure on my arm never lessened. When we finally emerged back into the sunlight, she seemed to snap out of it, yanking her hand away as if she'd been burned. She turned her head, refusing to look at me, but the two bright spots of color on her cheeks gave her away. A woman walking by with her own family smiled at us. "What a beautiful family you three are. The dad is so handsome, the mom is gorgeous, and your son is just adorable. You look like movie stars." Leo beamed. "Thank you, ma'am." I just smiled and nodded. Only Isabella stood frozen. She didn't offer her usual, sharp correction. "We're not a family." She just remained silent, her expression unreadable. That night, back at the house, I found Isabella alone in the living room, staring at her phone. The screen was lit up with a photo I'd taken of us at the park entrance. All three of us wearing those goofy Mickey Mouse ears. And on her face, a small, unconscious smile was playing on her lips. 3 days after the amusement park trip, Arthur the butler finally brought my actual son home. It turned out my father had picked him up for a few days to visit him in the countryside. His name was Noah Clark. When this small, skinny boy with timid eyes who couldn't even look up from the floor stood before me, I sighed internally. Like father, like son. The original Ethan was a doormat, and he'd raised a son who was just as meek. My mother-in-law, Sharon, saw her biological grandson and immediately swooped in, cooing over him. Then, she turned her venom on Leo, who was playing with his Avengers figures on the couch. "You little brat, what are you still doing in our house?" she snapped. "Go on, get out. Go back to your father." Leo froze, his big eyes instantly filling with tears. I walked over, picked him up, and stood between him and Sharon. "Mom, he's just a kid." "A kid? He's nothing but trouble, just like his father." Sharon retorted. "That's enough." A cold voice cut through the air from the top of the stairs. It was Isabella. She looked down at her mother with icy disdain. "If you're going to scream like that in this house, you can go back to your own." Sharon was so shocked at being reprimanded by her own daughter that she was left speechless. Isabella walked down and stood beside me. She glanced at the red-eyed Leo in my arms, then at Noah, who was hiding behind Sharon, looking terrified. She said nothing, simply turning and heading into the dining room. Dinner that night was even more awkward than before. It was a tale of two children. Noah sat rigidly in his chair, his head bowed, so low his chin was practically touching his chest. He ate timidly, not daring to reach for any of the dishes, as if terrified of making a sound. On the other side of the table, Leo acted as if he owned the place. He not only ate with gusto, but also used the serving spoons to put food on my plate and Isabella's. "Daddy needs to eat meat to be strong. Mommy needs to eat her veggies to stay pretty." Isabella stared at the piece of broccoli Leo had placed in her bowl, a look of bemused exasperation on her face. She tried to serve Noah a piece of fish. "Noah, eat up." The boy flinched as if he'd been struck, nearly dropping his bowl. He stammered, "Thank you. Mom." Isabella's hand froze midair. She then placed an identical piece of fish in Leo's bowl. Leo immediately looked up, gave her a bright, greasy smile, then leaned over and planted a loud kiss on her cheek. "Thank you, pretty mommy." I saw Isabella's entire body visibly relax. For the first time, she was discovering that interacting with a child could be fun and warm, not the tense, awkward ordeal it always was with Noah. After dinner, while playing in the living room, Noah accidentally knocked an antique vase off a pedestal. It shattered on the marble floor with a sickening crash. Noah's face went white with terror. He stood frozen for a second before bursting into tears. Sharon shrieked, and lunged at him, her hand raised. "You little brat. Do you have any idea how much that cost? I'll teach you a lesson." I moved fast, intercepting her before she could strike. "Mom, it was an accident." I pulled the terrified Noah behind me and knelt to carefully pick up the large pieces of ceramic. "It's okay. Don't be scared," I said to him softly. "The important thing is that you're not hurt. Just be more careful next time." Noah stared at me, his crying forgotten, and watching the entire scene from the second-floor landing was Isabella. She saw me patiently cleaning up the mess and gently comforting a frightened child. A look of genuine admiration crossed her face. That night, she did something she had never done before. She came to my room. In the entire year of our marriage, she had never once voluntarily set foot in this space. She stood awkwardly in the doorway. "You," she began, then hesitated. "Were you always like this?" I knew exactly what she was asking. Was I always this capable, this good with children? I smiled. I turned to face her, looking directly into her beautiful eyes, and asked, slowly and clearly, "Isabella, have you ever actually paid any attention to me before?" She was speechless, and she knew it was true. In her world, Ethan Clark, was just a placeholder, a tool, the bottom feeder in her social hierarchy. She never bothered to give me a second glance, let alone wonder what kind of person I always was. Seeing her standing there, silent and flustered, her face a mixture of colors, I knew. The thaw had officially begun. The preschool was holding its annual family field day. The teacher called specifically to insist that Ethan, Leo's dad, and Isabella, Leo's mom, attend, because Leo had been bragging to his entire class that he had the handsomest daddy and prettiest mommy in the whole world. When I told Isabella, her refusal was instantaneous. "I'm busse." That evening, Leo staged a hunger strike. He refused to eat a single bite of dinner, sitting in a corner and staring at us with the mournful eyes of an abandoned puppy. The next morning, as I was getting Leo ready to leave, I found Isabella standing by the door, dressed head to toe in designer athletic wear. I raised an eyebrow. "Big morning workout, Isabella?" She shot me a glare, fidgeting with the collar of her jacket. "I have a meeting." Leo cheered. "Yay, Mommy's coming to field day with us." Isabella's face turned a shade redder. When we arrived at the school, our family immediately became the center of attention. Or rather, our two families. Because Julian Vance was there too. He hadn't come alone. He'd brought a team of lawyers in suits and 2 cameramen, looking less like a dad at a field day and more like he was about to hold a hostile press conference. The first event was the 3-legged race. The rules were simple. 1 parent, 1 child. Julian strode over to Leo and, without asking, tied his leg to his son's. "Leo, if we win first place, Daddy will buy you a sports car." Leo looked at him, then over at me, a mischievous glint in his eye. The starting whistle blew. Julian, chanting left, right, left, took a large step forward. His teammate, however, remained rooted to the spot like a tree. Julian stumbled, nearly face-planting on the grass. He turned to Leo, furious. "Leo, what are you doing?" Leo blinked innocently. "Daddy, you're going too fast. I can't keep up." What followed was a masterclass in sabotage. No matter how Julian adjusted his pace, Leo found a way to perfectly counteract his every move. He'd trip him, or just stop dead in his tracks. Finally, about 10 yards from the finish line, Leo executed a perfect, decisive trip. Julian went down, hard, landing in an undignified heap on the grass. The crowd of parents roared with laughter. The 2 cameramen Julian had brought rushed forward, their flashes popping as they captured their boss's humiliation from every angle. Then it was our turn. The moment our legs were tied together, Leo wrapped his arm around my waist. "Let's go, Daddy. We're number 1. We moved in perfect sync, easily taking the lead and winning the race without breaking a sweat. As we crossed the finish line, I saw Isabella waiting for us. She was holding 2 bottles of water, and there was a smile on her face, a real, genuine smile she probably didn't even realize was there. She handed a bottle to me and one to Leo. Then, in a surprisingly natural gesture, she took out a tissue and gently wiped the sweat from his forehead. The scene, bathed in the morning sun, was almost painfully perfect. Across the field, Julian Vance watched us, his eyes burning with rage. For the next event, Tug of War, Julian dispensed with all pretense. He used his influence to rig the brackets, pitting his team against ours. His team, of course, was composed entirely of the large, muscular bodyguards he'd brought with him. The whistle blew, and our team was immediately dragged forward. I saw Julian on the other side, a smug, triumphant smirk on his face. He even had one of his men secretly try to trip me from behind. I felt my foot slip, and I pretended to lose my balance. Just then, a high-pitched scream cut through the air. "Mommy, help Daddy!" Before the words were even out, a figure shot out from the spectator area. It was Isabella. She ran to the back of our line, grabbed the thick rope, and pulled with all her might. Her designer sneakers had been kicked off somewhere along the way, and her hair was a mess, but the look on her face was one of pure, unyielding determination. Spurred on by her, our family of three, along with the other parents on our team, found a new surge of strength. The red ribbon in the center of the rope, inch by agonizing inch, began to move back toward our side. Finally, the whistle blew. We had won. Julian and his team of professional tough guys, caught off guard by the sudden shift, all tumbled to the ground in a heap. The crowd erupted in cheers. I turned and saw Isabella, panting and covered in sweat, but laughing like a child. The sunlight caught her face, and in that moment, I felt my heart skip a beat. Across the field, Julian Vance, now the laughingstock of the entire event, stared at me, at Leo, and at the fierce woman who stood beside us. He knew he had lost again, utterly and completely. 9. After the field day, Isabella's attitude toward me changed completely. The iceberg was melting. In the mornings, she tried to tie my tie for me. Her attempts were clumsy, leaving it crooked and lopsided, but she did it. At lunchtime, she'd have her driver deliver a bento box she'd made herself. I opened the first one to find chicken wings that looked like they'd personally met the charcoal briquettes, mac and cheese, where she clearly used sugar instead of salt, and a brown slurry of unidentifiable origin. It was a culinary crime scene. I ate every bite without flinching. That evening, she asked me nervously how it was. I wiped my mouth and gave her a serious look. An improvement, much better than the time you almost burned down the kitchen. She blushed, a mix of anger and embarrassment, and gave my arm a light punch. It felt less like a hit and more like a caress. She started getting jealous. One afternoon, I was talking to a female colleague from marketing in the lobby of my office building. When I got home that night, she casually brought it up. "That woman you were talking to today, she's very pretty. Are you too?" Closed. The acidity in her tone was unmistakable. But the biggest change was how she treated her mother. When Sharon started one of her usual tirades, screaming at me over some trivial matter, Isabella came downstairs and stood directly in front of me, shielding me. "Mom, Ethan is not the person you think he is," she said, her voice firm. "If you're going to continue to treat him like this, you are no longer welcome here." Sharon's jaw dropped. She never in a million years imagined that her own daughter, who had always treated me with such disdain, would publicly defend me against her. I was surprised, too. A warmth spread through my chest. My wife was starting to have my back. She even started consulting our resident expert, Leo, for advice. One night, I walked past Leo's room and overheard her whispering inside. "Now, how do I get your daddy to like me more?" I nearly burst out laughing. The great Isabella Rossi, CEO of a billion-dollar company, was asking a 5-year-old for dating advice. Leo, ever the strategist, had a simple solution. "It's easy. I saw it on TV. You have to wear your prettiest dress, put on nice-smelling perfume, and then you kiss him." I could only imagine how red Isabella's face must have been. I thought she was just asking hypothetically. I never thought she'd actually go through with it. That night, I came out of the shower to find the bedroom lit only by a single dim lamp on the nightstand. Isabella was standing by the window, wearing a sexy, black silk nightgown I had never seen before. The thin fabric clung to her curves, outlining her stunning figure. She flinched when she heard me enter. She turned around, her face the color of a ripe tomato, her eyes darting everywhere but at me. "You." She was so nervous she couldn't form a sentence. I walked slowly toward her. The air was filled with the clean scent of her body wash, mixed with a hint of a delicate, floral perfume. I stopped in front of her, watching her long eyelashes tremble. I reached out, gently cupping her chin, and tilted her face up to meet my gaze. Then, I let out a low whistle, my voice a little rough. "Honey," I said with a smirk, "you're playing with fire." 10. Julian Vance finally snapped. His business was being dismantled piece by Isabella. His own son viewed him as the villain and worshipped his rival. He felt that his pride, his very identity as a powerful CEO, had been trampled into the dust by a worthless freeloader. So he did something desperate. He staged a fake kidnapping. He hired a couple of low-level thugs to grab Leo on his way home from school. The plan was for Julian to then swoop in like a superhero, save his son, and win back his affection through a grand, heroic gesture. He planned for everything, except for the fact that his son was not a normal 5-year-old. Leo, that little genius, took one look at the so-called kidnappers and knew something was up. Their acting was terrible, their eyes were shifty, and they could barely remember their lines. He immediately deduced it was another one of his father's pathetic schemes. So, he decided to play along. He pretended to be terrified, allowing himself to be shoved into the back of a van. But in the split second before the door slammed shut, he used his GPS smartwatch to send me his location and a prearranged secret code. Avengers assemble. Hostiles engaged, requesting immediate backup. I was in the middle of a very serious discussion with Isabella about what to have for dinner when the message came through. I showed her the phone. The color drained from her face. The glass she was holding slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. "Now, he's been kidnapped." She was frantic, shaking, grabbing my arm with a desperation I'd never seen before. For the first time, she was completely reliant on me. "Ethan, what do we do?" "We have to call the police." "Now." I put my hand over hers, forcing myself to remain calm. "No, don't. Calling the police might be exactly what he wants." I looked at the location ping at the coded message and my mind raced. "This has Julian's name written all over it. It's a setup." "What?" Isabella stared at me in disbelief. "He wants to be the hero," I said with a cold smile. "So let's make sure his grand performance is a total flop." I grabbed her hand, and instead of calling 911, we got in the car and drove straight to the location, an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. We arrived just as the show was beginning. Hiding in the shadows, we watched as Julian Vance put on a heroic display, taking down the two fake kidnappers with a few poorly choreographed punches. He adjusted his expensive suit, struck what he clearly thought was a heroic pose, and extended a hand to Leo, who was sitting on the floor, rescued. "Leo, don't be afraid. Daddy is here to save you." Leo looked up and saw us, standing in the doorway of the warehouse. His eyes lit up. The next second, he burst into tears, scrambled to his feet, and ran past Julian, launching himself at me like a rocket. "Daddy, I was so scared." He sobbed, clinging to my leg. Then, he raised a small, trembling hand and pointed directly at the utterly bewildered Julian Vance. "Daddy, it was him. That man. He was with the kidnappers. He told them to grab me." A truly epic betrayal. The proud, heroic smile on Julian's face froze, then crumbled. He was stunned, speechless, and completely incriminated by his own son. I held the sobbing Leo, pulled out my phone, started recording, and aimed the camera squarely at Julian's priceless expression. I spoke slowly, letting him twist in the wind. "Julian Vance, care to explain?" 11. I anonymously sent a video, the one titled "Hero Dad Accused by Son as Kidnapping Mastermind," to a few friendly contacts in the media. The next day, the internet exploded. Hashtag #SoZaster. Billionaire busted in fake kidnapping plot to win son's love. Hashtag Family Feud. When your dad the villain and your fake dad's a hero. Hashtag Worst Dad Ever trends after 5-year-old exposes father's scheme. The headlines were brutal. Paired with a video of Julian's shocked, guilty face and Leo's damning accusation, the story went viral across Twitter, TikTok, and every major news outlet. Vance Industries' stock plummeted, losing billions in market value in a matter of hours. A ruined Julian Vance became the laughingstock of the entire country. While he was down, Isabella went in for the kill. She marshaled all of Rossi Enterprises' resources and launched an all-out corporate assault. Hostile takeovers, poaching top talent, stealing key accounts. In less than a week, the once mighty Vance Industries was on the brink of collapse. The kidnapping fiasco also attracted the attention of the police. While it was ultimately dismissed as a domestic dispute, Julian was officially labeled as emotionally unstable and unfit for custody. The case went to family court. Leo himself was asked to choose who he wanted to live with. In the courtroom, Julian Vance broke down. All his arrogance was gone. He pleaded like a broken man, begging for his son's forgiveness. He promised to buy Leo all the toys in the world, to build him a private theme park bigger than Disneyland. Leo listened quietly until he was finished. Then, he hopped down from his chair and walked slowly toward his father. Everyone in the courtroom held their breath, thinking he was about to give in. Even I felt a knot of tension in my stomach. Leo looked up at his biological father, his expression not of hatred, but of a calm maturity far beyond his years. "Dad," he said seriously, "I used to want all the toys in the world because I thought toys were the only things that would ever stay with me. But things are different now." With that, he turned his back on Julian and, in front of the entire court, he ran toward us. He didn't throw himself into my arms or Isabella's. Instead, he reached out his small hands. One of them found mine and squeezed it tight. The other found Isabella's. He turned back to the judge and, in a clear, ringing voice that filled the silent courtroom, he announced his decision. "I choose them. I choose my daddy and my mommy." In that moment, it was as if all the sound in the world had disappeared. I saw Julian Vance collapse in his chair, all the fight gone out of him. He had lost, absolutely and irrevocably. Beside me, Isabella looked down at our three hands, clasped together. Her eyes slowly filled with tears. She squeezed my hand tighter, her palm warm and sure against mine. She looked at me, and in those eyes that were once as cold as a winter storm, I saw nothing but warmth, trust, and a love so clear it took my breath away. I knew, from that moment on, we were a real family. 12, the dust settled. Julian Vance went bankrupt. Rumor has it he took what little he had left and moved to another country, never to be heard from again. We officially adopted Leo. On his new birth certificate, his name was changed to Leo Clark. My biological son, Noah, under the influence of his new, outrageously extroverted brother, slowly came out of his shell. He was no longer the timid little boy who was afraid of his own shadow. My mother-in-law, Sharon, did a complete 180. She now treats me with more affection than she ever showed her own daughter, constantly cooking for me and showering me with praise, terrified that the savior of the Rossi family might one day get tired of it all and run off with her daughter. And as for my Ice Queen wife, Isabella Rossi, her frosty persona has shattered for good. She's no longer the untouchable CEO. She's a woman head over heels in love. She'll be in the middle of a multi-million-dollar video conference and text me a gif of a kitten rolling around with the caption, "Hubby, when are you coming home? I miss you." It completely unnerves her business partners, who are convinced the CEO's phone has been hacked. For our anniversary, she booked out an entire 5-star restaurant overlooking the city skyline. Then, with a string quartet playing softly, she pulled out a crumpled piece of paper and serenaded me with a love song. Her voice clumsy, but full of emotion. She got so nervous, she forgot the lyrics halfway through and turned bright red. I walked over, wrapped my arms around her, and teased her. "Isabella, what happened to your brand? Where's the fearsome CEO? The corporate titan?" She blushed, stood on her toes, and kissed me. "It disappeared," she murmured against my lips, "the day I truly saw you. Ethan Clark, I love you." The sun was warm. The breeze was gentle. On the lawn outside our home, Leo and Noah were chasing each other with water guns, their laughter echoing like wind chimes. I held the woman in my arms, no longer an ice queen, but my warm, loving, and slightly clingy wife, and watched our sons play. My heart felt full. This insane, unexpected journey began with the world's most unbelievable mix-up, but it gave me something I never would have dared to dream of. A perfect family, and it was worth every crazy second.